John, this is Enron meets Wall Street bets. It's that disgusting when you really see what's happening. First thing, windmills, everyone's talking, you see the memes. Well, windmills work fine in Norway and over here and everything. It was a kind of specific case because of the humidity. It was icing. And the icing, that won't stop anywhere. So you don't have those particular conditions. Wind power, by the way, in Texas is completely valid in my book. Obviously not for these conditions. So there was a chain reaction. Those went down. We already had the polar vortex coming. We knew days ahead of time it was going to go down to 7 degrees. What you'll hear the news saying is natural gas-fired plants had supply problems. This is bullcrap. And this is something that I haven't seen discussed. The gas providers have their own rules and regulations. Their rule is it goes towards residential and heating above and beyond anything else, including gas-fired plants. So what has Austin done very successfully for their own carbon initiatives? They have shut down, decommissioned, and in some cases outright forbidden, dual plants that can do oil and natural gas, where they could store some of the oil. The natural gas generators don't store that much natural gas on site. So that's why you hear, you have supply issues. No, it didn't freeze. They literally were not getting it because they were sending it to people to warm their homes. Coal plants, same thing. It's all kind of been shut down. And it's great, virtue signal, we get green energy, blah, blah, blah. Then we had the nuclear plant that got the false signal. It shut down. But here's the biggest problem that happened. And this is where I'd like to introduce ERCOT. The price per megawatt hour of energy, which is typically $25 to maybe a peak sometime in the summer of $80 per megawatt hour. Do you know what the price is at this very moment still, John?
I don't know.
$9,000.
$9,000.
And that's the cap. There's a regulatory cap that the energy price cannot go above $9,000 per megawatt hour. And interestingly, ERCOT got permission to pass that on to the customers. So there's little incentive with these guys to do much about it. Let me introduce ERCOT, and then I'll tell you where the problem lies.
ERCOT provides a central place where generation is dispatched out onto the grid and where generation and load are balanced at all times. ERCOT is similar to an air traffic controller. It doesn't own the airplanes or the runways, but it steps back and makes sure everything is flowing properly and efficiently. ERCOT doesn't own the assets. It doesn't make electricity, but it monitors all the moving parts that keep electricity flowing and keeps the markets that provide electricity to Texans running. There are a number of participants in ERCOT's market that make electricity work in Texas, starting from your home. Your home receives electricity from a distribution company. The distribution company receives electricity from the transmission system, which is what ERCOT is managing in its control room. ERCOT has prepared for the future in 2 primary ways. 1, to make sure its people, systems, and market participants have the right rules to manage a changing system. 2, from a technological perspective, the grid operator has to be very sophisticated in order to manage the future of the electric grid. The best thing about ERCOT is the people, committed to the mission of making sure electric power will always get to the people of Texas. ERCOT, your power, our promise.
Yeah, it's always nasty how those types of PR things don't age very well. This is a RTO, a regional transmission organization, and you're probably going to have to be able to help me with some of this, John. In 1996 is when energy deregulation came in, and that's when a number of regions were created, certainly not all states. I think really only maybe 18 states in total, but California has an RTO, regional transmission organization. Texas has it, and we have it over our own grid. And then there's several in New England. There's a couple other ones. The idea was this deregulation would create a market that would drive prices down because there were all these different ways of creating energy. And the regional transmission organizations are there to really do one thing, and that is to accept or deny bids every 5 minutes with the cost of energy and then switch that. So you've got the power generators, you have people who are using natural gas, guys who are doing coal, what's left of them. You got the solar, you got the wind power. all of those offer up their megawatt per hour price into this system, and they're bidding. And the way the clearing price or whatever price is taken is a complete black box. These regional transmission organizations often have laws that specifically forbid the press from attending their meetings. There's all kinds of jerk-offs on the boards of these companies. It's really like backroom, dark alley type stuff. And they have one cardinal rule, which is you are never allowed to name the fuel. And this is, as I discovered, what got Rick Perry fired. Remember, he was our energy secretary, and then he decided he needed to go and go spend time with his family. That's because 2018, I think when he was still energy secretary, he made a public statement and said, we need to make Texas winter resilient. That's the term, winter resilient, meaning typically you have oil reserves 90 days or coal or something because other stuff will stop and won't flow.
Rick Perry got pushed out because he was telling the truth.
The problem was not that he was telling the truth. The problem was that he specifically mentioned coal and the N-word. You can never mention that because, according to the regional transmission organizations, at the exchange itself, you can't have a bias over what kind of power that is. Everybody knows that the guys over at the solar farm and the windmill farm, that they get subsidies, so their actual cost is lower. Oil and gas has certain subsidies. There's all kinds of things that go into this price. But what's amazing is this auction. And this is where the next ERCOT boasting video comes in.
ERCOT is always coordinating the flow of electricity, but it also has important roles in managing the financial side of the energy market, collecting money from companies that consume power and then paying the resources that produce it. So, in a lot of ways, ERCOT is like the stock exchange, making sure that transactions are handled accurately and efficiently, and that the right technology is available to keep those transactions flowing smoothly. ERCOT also provides financial and accounting services to the wholesale market under a set of market rules, so the grid can work effectively and efficiently. ERCOT, your power, our promise.
So, it is not like the stock market. It is exactly that with all the same players. There's an entire secondary market, which no one talks about. Is if you go in and look at the auction bids, these every 5 minutes, there's not 10 power generating companies. Yeah, they're in there. But there's maybe 200 parties in there bidding. And these are guys who are shorting, hedging, hedge funds. Actual hedge funds are in this game. You could be getting energy that has been traded 5 times in 5 minutes to make more profit before it gets to you.
I bet you there's a lot of Enron people involved in this.
And to make it worse, I have in my possession documentation, which I can't give up because, of course, it was given to me confidentially, that they do the same trick. Scheduling an outage can increase our profits when done properly. That's what Enron did. They were shutting down power generation to create a false scarcity. That's a part of their business model, a part of the business model. So it's exactly that. Enron, Wall Street bets, and what happened is no one has responsibility. You can't blame traders who are in there. They're just trading to make a buck. No, you can't blame them. You can't blame ERCOT. They're just doing what they do, just getting the best price. No one had an incentive because of the lack of financial rewards for having fuel on site. That's it. And these guys were loving the price because as the cold started to come in, they were like, oh, fuck, this is great. What percentage increase is that from $25 to $9,000?
So
they were crushing it. They were killing it until stuff started to trip offline. We got completely hosed by a clearinghouse, not dissimilar to Wall Street's DTCC, whatever it is, their central clearinghouse. People are trading futures. You're buying oil or gas-powered energy that someone bought 5 years ago. And so there's no way to have any oversight. This is literally like NASDAQ. No one gives a shit what happens downstream.
Well, why would they? No sweat off my balls is the old saying.
The way I see it, we need Enron-level hearings because it's the same thing. We need Enron-level hearings because it's sanctioned.
The Enron models have permeated the entire country. Mm-hmm. Once Enron was broken up, all those guys scattered. I actually know one of them. In fact, I have some Enron golf balls.
You got to put those on Etsy.
I'm thinking about it. And they scattered around the country with these ideas. It's almost like a cancer. And as you outlined, it's great. You implement these ideas all over the place. It's just fabulous. And a lot of it has to do with privatization and the bogus little middlemen that are put into the system to make privatization work. It's pretty obvious to people, or not to everybody, but to a lot of people, that privatization in public utilities is really not a great idea.
Well, in reading this book, you really have the power grid and then the policy grid. And the idea you get about the deregulation, what happened in 96, is kind of Orwellian. So deregulation, in fact, meant tons of regulations, tons of all kinds of rules and advantages for this guy, that guy. That's all the politicians are all a part of this. It's not just the governor. It's just not just the legislature. It's all the greedy fucks. It's the whole system. And they got caught with their pants down because they believe global warming is happening and not global cooling. That's pretty much it. This is only because of this freeze that no one expected. And the news media is not informing people of what's happening. And they'll never know. Instead, we're all like, AOC sucks, Green New Deal, blah. Republicans suck, deregulation, privatizing. Blah.
Not your best voice.
I haven't had any television.
Yeah, on no agenda.